So for you to understand our lesson better, it is better for us to have an illustrative example. So as per this illustrative example right here, we are in need to estimate the materials needed for the following woodwork. So here, so this is to be done in wood. From that, we are to estimate for this. So its specification would be, it would be having wall studs, and the size for the wall studs would be 2 by 3 inches, and its center to center spacing would be 30 cm by 30 cm. And as for the interior walls, so if you can see here, these interior walls are made out of plywood. And as for the exterior walls, this would be having a 1 by 6 inches siding. So this would be your sidings. And as for the door opening, 0.8 by 2.1 meters. So ito yung pintuan natin. So in this hole right here, it has a dimension of 0.8 by 2.1. And as for the window opening, 1.2 by 1.8. So for us to solve for the wall studs, this would be our approach. So the first thing that we should do in order for us to solve for the wall studs is to compute for the area of the wall where you would be putting your wall studs. So first one is to compute for the area. And after that, you have solved for the area already, so you must multiply it by our factor. And as for this factor right here, we would be deriving that later. Okay, so for us to compute for the area, so anong area ba yung compute natin? Would we compute for the exterior area or the interior area? We would be computing the center to center area of our wall studs. And if you can remember here, ang wall studs daw natin would be 2 inches by 3 inches. So I'll just write it here. So wall studs to be used would be 2 inches by 3 inches. And let's say that what we would be ordering would be, let's say, by 12. So let's say that this is to be the material that we would be ordering. Okay, so for us to solve for the area, I'll just show you the three-dimensional object of this. So this is to be the three-dimensional model for our problem. So there. And we must compute for the area that we would be using for us to compute the wall studs. So the question is, anong area ba yung kukunin natin? Would it be the interior walls? Would it be the area of the interior walls? Or would it be the area of the exterior walls? So the answer is, we would be computing for neither. It should be the center to center spacing of the wall studs. So your wall studs is actually located in here. So yung white na yan, nandyan sa loob yung ating wall studs. So for us to compute for that, what we should do is that we must divide this in such a way that there would be no redundant areas. Because if we are to compute for the exterior area, mayroon tayong parts dito na magiging redundant. So dito sa part na to. So with that being said, what we should do is to divide it this way. So I would be highlighting them in yellow. So ayan. So as you can see here, we would be computing for this area right here and as well as for this area right here. So ayan, and our approach here for better computation is to compute the whole area as a gross, then subtract these holes right here. Okay, so saan ko ba ilalagay itong SketchUp natin? So taas natin. Okay, by the way, let's change the color of the other part to be red. So para sa computation natin, para mas maayos. Okay, so with that, our area, so area of the studs, so let's say that A is area studs, that should be equal to, so if you can see on your left, the dimension right here would be 3 meters by 2.7. So yung red na yan ilalagay ko. So that is to be 3 meters by 2.7 meters. And since we are to compute for the gross area first, so kunin ko yung buong area na to as well as the area right here. So that is to be times 2 as well. Okay, after that, we would be adding the area of the yellow line on the figure on your right, which is actually this area right here. So once again, gross area muna. Mamaya na natin i-subtract ang ating holes. So from that, we would be adding these areas right here. So that is to be 3.5 meters. And as you can see on your right, so dito sa area na to, meron tayong maibabawas. And this area right here, this dimension right here is actually 3 inches. Since ang gagamitin nating wall studs has a 3 inches width. Sa cross-sectional niya, 3 inches to. So, with that being said, this certain area right here should be 3 inches. Okay, so we would be subtracting that. So, minus 3 inches is equal to 0.075. So, convert it. So, let's assume that 1 inch is equal to 25 mm. So, 25 mm times 3. So, that is to be 75 mm. And if we are to convert it into meters, we would be dividing it by 1,000. So, that is to be 0.075. So, we would be subtracting minus 0.075. But we would be multiplying 2 because, okay, so if you can see the figure on your right, so ayan, no, dalawang 75 mm kasi yung matatanggal sa kanya. So, there, if you can see that. So, this part and this part. So, we would be subtracting that. Okay, so, balik kayo sa figure natin. So, this should be times 2. So, after that, we would now be multiplying this by the height. So, ano ba yung height natin? So, same, 2.7 meters. So, 2.7 meters. So, after that, we must now subtract the openings. And from the previous slide, our openings would be 0.8 by 2.1 and 1.2 by 1.8. Okay, so minus 2.1 times 0.8. So minus once again 1.2 by 1.8. So with that, the area of the studs would be, so using my calculator on your left, 3 times 2.7 times 2 plus 2 times parenthesis 3.5 minus 0.075 times 2. So closing parenthesis times 2.7 minus 2.1 times 0.8 minus 1.2 times 1.8. So our answer here would be 30.45 square meters. So our answer here would be 30.45 square meters. So this would be the area of the wall wherein we would be putting our wall studs. So after that, we must multiply it by our factor. So alisin ko na muna ang ating 3-dimensional object. So what we must do is to assume that we would be having a certain 1 square meter of an area. Ang gagawin kasi natin, since we already know the area, so our area is actually equal to 30.45 meters squared. So we must multiply this by the factor wherein we are to get the number of length. So we must get the length per square meter for us to get the length of our timber. The thing is, we don't know yet how many meters are there in a certain square meter of an area, since it is said here in the problem earlier that for our wall studs, it has a center-to-center spacing of 30 centimeters. So actually, ito ginawa ko na to para sa inyo. Okay, so let's assume that this dimensions right here actually is 1 meter. So let's say that that is 1 meter and this is also 1 meter. So 1 meter by 1 meter. So if you would be getting this whole area right here, 1 square meter. So after that, we would be solving for the length of wood inside a 1 meter by 1 meter square. This actually has a spacing of, so ito, mga spacing niya is in 0.3. So here, this is to be 0.3 meters, 0.3, and 0.3. So if you would be adding these 3, 0.9, meron pa tayong natirang 0.1 dito. So ang gagawin nyo lang is ipagkasya nyo lahat ng ating wood sa 1 meter. And if this is to be both ways, so both ways naman daw siya, this is also 0.3 by, so 0 0.3, 0 0.3, 0 0.3, 0 0.3, and ultimately 0 0.1. If we are to count the number of, the length of wood in there, so eto siya. So for the length, that is to be, bilangin natin yung isang buong yan, highlight ko lang. So this is to be 1 meter plus 1 meter plus 1 meter plus 1 meter. So that is to be 4 meters. So 4 meters plus, so what would be this? So this is to be, this is to be this. So for us to get this blue line right here, the blue length right here, it is basically 1 meter, 1 meter minus, so the number of wood here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, so minus 3 times its thickness. And this wall studs right here has a dimension of 2 by 3. So 2 inches by 3 inches. So this is to be 2 inches or 50 mm. And 50 mm is 0.05. Okay, by the way, guys. Okay, so if this is to be the area of your wall, so for example, if this is to be your wall, the layout of your wall studs would be in this manner. So if this is to be in 0.3 to 0.3 meter spacing, so ganito yung magiging itsura niya. And it's, if this is to be 2 by 3, so what is actually showing right now would be the 2-inch dimension. And if you would be looking at the side, so this is to be the depth or the 3 inches. So ito yung 2 inches. And if you would be looking at this part, that this is to be 3 inches. So it would be as simple as that. Okay, so this is to be the length of the horizontal wood. So with that, so 1 minus 3 times 0.05. So itong 3 times 0.05 na to is this 1, 2, 3, 4. So nagkamali tayo doon. That should be 4. So 4 times 0.05. So 4 times 0.05. And if you are to solve for this, so the length of the 2 by 2 wall studs would be equal to, oops, may kulang pa na naman tayo dito. This hole right here should be multiplied by 4 since meron tayong 4 na sets ng horizontal bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I am sorry, horizontal lumber I should say. Okay, so if you are to solve for the length of the 2 by 2 here, so L2 by 2, 2 by 3. So this is to be 2 by 3. 2 by 3. This is to be equal to 4 plus 4 times 4 times 4 times 1 minus 4 times 0.05. So that would give us an answer of 7.2 meters. So 7.2 meters per square meter. So this implies that for every square meter of an area, you would be needing 7.2 meters of wood. And since we are to compute for the board foot later, we must convert this into foot. So from that, we must multiply this by our conversion factor, and our conversion factor here would be 3.28 feet for every 1 meter. And ultimately, you would be arriving at a length of, so length by of 2 by 3 per area. So lagyan natin per area mamaya yan. So 7.2 times 3.28. So that is to be 23.616. So 23.616 feet per meter squared. So after that, we would be multiplying this by the area, which is this, for us to get the total length of the whole wall area. The total length of the wall studs that we would be needing for the whole wall area. Okay, so from that, so let's say the length total for the wall studs would be, our area is 30.45 square meters. So we would be multiplying this by 23.616 feet per square meter. So from that, square meters would cancel out, and the length of the total, the total length of the wall studs that we would be needing for the whole project would be 30.45 times 23.616. So this is to be 719.107 feet. So 719.107 feet. Okay, so the question is, are we done? So basically not yet. And since we don't have any space anymore, I would be copying this to the next slide. So ayan, para lang makita natin. What we would be doing next is for us to compute for the total number of board foot that we would be needing. And since we need a total of 719.107 feet of 2x3 lumber, we would be solving for the total board foot. So for the PF total, so total board foot, that is to be equal to 2 inches by 3 inches by 719.107 feet. So ayan. Di ba pala tapos? Times our conversion factor, and our conversion factor here would be 1 board foot for every 12 inch feet. So you can either do this for these units to cancel out, or you can just convert this into inches and solve for the volume in cubic inches and multiply this by 1/144. So kayo na bahala, and for me, I would be doing this instead. Okay, so the answer here would be 2 by 3 by 719.107 divided by 12. So the total number of board foot. So the total board foot would be, so PF total, that is to be 359.554 or 55. So board foot. So this is to be the total board foot that we would be needing. And since the quantity that we would be solving here in this problem would be the number of pieces of 2 by 3 by 12, what we would be doing is to divide this by the volume of one piece of 2 by 3 by 12. So note, so if you are to look in the upper right side of the screen, dito ko na-solve yung board foot niya. So for one piece of 2 by 3 by 12, so let's multiply it again by our factor. So by times 1 board foot for every 12 inch feet. So that is to be equal to, so 2 by 3 by 12. So 2 by 3 by 12 divided by 12, that is to be 6. So 6 board foot per piece. So what this implies is that for every one piece of 2 by 3 by 12, it has a volume of 6 board foot. So from that itself, we would be dividing this by this volume right here for us to get the number of pieces of 2 by 3 by 12. So from that, 359.55 board foot divided by 6 board foot per piece. So board foot would cancel out, and this would give us an answer of 359.55 divided by 6. So ultimately, our answer here would be 59.925. So 59.925 pieces. And since we cannot buy just 0.9 piece of a 2 by 3 by 12 lumber, we must round this up to 60 pieces. So this is to be the number of wall studs that we would be ordering. So 60 pieces, 2 by 3 by 12. So that is to be for the wall studs.